Welcome to the Church of Business and Finance podcast. Now, this week we'll be talking about how to deal with the losses that we're going to have in all kinds of investments that we have. Because it's not just about investing in the stock market or investing in perhaps a business or investing your time, but it's everything that you're investing in because you're always investing. And we have to learn, when is it time to cut our losses? How do we deal with this? Because we're going to have losses. The fact that we actually make a trade means that we're taking a risk of some sort. And I don't just mean a trade, again, with the stock market or with Forex or with whatever. It's any type of trade. And your main trade that you have every day is your time. So you trade your time every time that you do anything. And you have to decide, when is it not a good trade anymore? When is it gone bad? When is it a loss? When is it something that you need to cut your losses with? Maybe you have friends that are eating up a lot of your time. And yes, sometimes they help you, but most of the time it ends up hurting you, maybe financially or emotionally or whatever. And it's more of a loss than what you get out of that person for a gain. In this case, you're losing more than you're gaining. And this is the key issue for deciding whether or not something is worth your time or worth your investment or not, is, are you getting out more than what you're putting in? Because if you're not, then you're not really profiting in any way. You're just losing out. And we don't want to just have a life where we're losing all the time. We want to be able to put something in and get more out of it. All right, that's the beauty of life, that we're able how can I say, that we're able to take advantage of while we're alive. People that are dead and gone, they don't get the chance to put their time in and get something out. It's already over for them. So while you're alive, while you're here, build up what you can here so that you can then either distribute it how you want or invest it in the way that you want. Because that's the great thing about profiting off what you do, is that the more that you profit, the more you have to invest. All right, so we're going to be looking at some of those losses. I said last time we were going to look at some specific examples or just some more tangible ideas. But Joanna, what do you think about losses?
I think it's very situational, and depending on the type of loss, if you're trying to improve your life by improving your circle, like your circle of friends, then, take an inventory of what that friend that maybe is toxic is contributing to your life, whether positive or negative, and, just decide if you want to stay in this path or if you want to, do something else with your life, and you got to cut that friend out somehow.
But it's scary to think about cutting our losses, right? I mean, sometimes we feel like if we've lost a little bit, we just need to put a little bit more in, and maybe we'll get that profit. But there has to come a time when we cut those losses, right?
Yeah, you got to figure out when to stop watering the weeds and to cut them and water the flowers instead.
Because if you don't, you'll end up with a whole garden full of just a mess of stuff, and we won't have the time and energy to grow the things that are doing well, that give you a good return. All right, so we're going to look at an example. All right, so what we're going to do is think about a sandwich shop, and I like to use this sandwich shop idea because it's very tangible. It's something that it's easy to wrap our minds around. But imagine we have a sandwich shop. All right, we've opened this up, and the first month we lose a little bit of money. That's to be expected. Maybe we had the lease to sign for the first time. We had to buy a lot of ingredients. We had payroll to make. We had to spend money on advertising. All right. At this point, it might not be a bad loss. It's a little loss, but it's not a bad loss, and it's an expected loss. On average, the average business doesn't start making money until 2 or 3 years down the road. Most businesses fail, but the ones that do stick around end up, there's a period of losses that go on at the beginning. It's very rare that you have a business that opens and it's just a hit and it's boom, and like within the first week they're making a whole bunch of profit. But again, with this sandwich shop, maybe after the first week or the first month or whatever, it's making a little bit of money, and it's generating some income, but it's not a profit yet, so it's a loss. This isn't necessarily a time when you might want to cut those losses and say, you know what, I give up on the whole sandwich shop. But let's say we go down to the second month. In the second month, we're losing even more money. Well, that's kind of concerning, but again, maybe it's to be expected. Third month, maybe it's losing even more money. This is starting to become a problem, and we should start to see a pattern where it's getting bad. It's getting worse over time. It's not getting better. And this is something that we have to look at for the losses as well. Are the losses getting bigger? The more that we put in, are we losing more? Or are we putting in more and we're starting to have an upturn or a change in direction on the bottom line? You see, money is a tool that we get to use not just to hoard and sit on top of like Scrooge McDuck and dive into, and it's like the end goal. It's something that helps us to understand the amount of profit that we're making, how much we're actually putting into something. Because if you talk to a business owner, let's say that owns a sandwich shop, they might be putting in a lot more than just their money. They're putting in their time, they're putting in their savings and their effort. And remember, we only have a limited amount of time in life. So they're putting in something that they don't get back. You can always make more money. You can't necessarily always make more time. So you have to think, well, at what point is that loss significant enough that it has to be a cut? And this is something, again, that we have to decide for ourselves. There's nobody out there who's going to be able to tell you this is the exact amount that you're supposed to lose. But you can decide what your strategy is for your loss. Just remember in your head what that predetermined place is. Like when you walk into, let's say, a casino, you have to already be ready to decide, hey, I'm not willing to lose more than this amount of money. When you go into a grocery store, Target, or whatever, you have to say, this is how much I'm willing to lose. Because if you don't, you'll end up losing more than you anticipated, and maybe more than you're able to take. Able to take at one time as a loss. And that might put you in a bad place for your other investments. Because remember, it's not about having all your eggs in one basket. You're supposed to divide your time and your effort and your money amongst a bunch of different things. Maybe that's your family and your personal relationships. Maybe that's your business and your work. Maybe it's a hobby or something that you're turning into a business. Whatever it is, an art project. But you have to decide from the get-go, when is it time to close down the sandwich shop? When is it not profitable to you anymore? When is it more bad stuff than good stuff? You have to decide that. I'm not here to tell you when that is. I'm just telling you to make sure that you're cognizant of it and you're ready and willing to cut your losses. Because you're going to be scared to cut. It's scary to lose. And for some reason, a lot of people believe that when it starts getting bad, you just have to invest more and it's going to get better.
I think the alternative is you have to think about, would it be scarier to cut your losses or scarier to continue down this road and just end up in a really bad place in the future and wishing that you had gone back to this very day where you had the decision to either cut your losses or stay on a bad path? Mm-hmm. And I think that's scarier, not making a decision to improve your life.
And sometimes that can be the issue, is that we're scared to make a decision. But that's why I say, if you start out from the get-go with the idea in your mind that this is when you're going to cut your losses, this is when you're going to stand up from the gambling table, or this is when you're going to pull out your investment, this is when you're going to stop doing something. If you have a predetermined point as to where you're going to cut your losses, it'll make it a whole lot easier. And then it's more about mental discipline, all right, and just learning to cut your losses when you said that you wanted to cut them.
I wonder if that point where you determine to cut your losses, is that your breaking point? So if you have to determine where your breaking point is in a specific situation, then you have to just understand, where is like the point of no return? Like, where does it can you turn back and you'll recoup some losses? Or where you just got to cut it clean and just move on.
Mm-hmm. And this, again, it's not just about a stock portfolio or a business, but in your investments that you make in other people. I really want to stress the idea that it's very inclusive of the relationships you have with people. When is a relationship toxic? When is that point when you're like, I'm no longer going to accept, these losses? Let's say you're in a violent relationship with somebody. And let's say you're a victim of domestic violence. You have to decide, is this the point, when he hits you or when she hits you, is that the point at which that you're going to stop? Or is one time okay?
How much is enough? Like you have to determine, when is it just your breaking point? When is it going to be like, just you can't take anymore, so you got to leave? Like you have to determine that. And I think a good rule of thumb for relationships is what I've always used is when the bad times start outweighing the good times. So if you're having like all kinds of fights and just like a lot of tension in the household, then is it time to cut your losses? In my life, that's when it's proven to be like the end of the relationship, is when just like you're always fighting and you're always like at each other's heads, like butting heads. And that's just my basic rule of thumb, was when the bad times start outweighing the good times, just gotta move on.
All right. Well, remember that. When is it a bad time for you? When is it no longer fun? When is it no longer worth your investment? Or when is it no longer worth further investment? Because, and we'll talk about this in the next little podcast, but there are always more opportunities out there. You know, just because you lose one time doesn't mean that you don't have opportunities in the future to win. So, don't be afraid to cut your losses.
There's plenty of fish in the sea.
Yes, but be ready to, and have your mind set on when you're going to cut your losses. All right, we'll catch you guys later.
Peace.